All right, welcome back to another edition of Mayday Monday. This is the Mayday Monday for April 2023. Again, this is a monthly magazine here, monthly podcast here for our firefighter safety survival campaign. I want to, before we get too deep into this month's podcast, I want to remember those firefighters that we have lost since the last time we were together. Recent line of duty deaths. It was a Rocky Wood. He was Virginia Department of Forestry. He died in an ATV accident while fighting a wildfire. Chief was a longtime chief, volunteer chief in Hayseed, Virginia. That's about 250 miles from the Mayday Monday headquarters here. Bill Four of Brady, Texas Fire and EMS was found deceased in the firehouse. Steve Bullwinkle Harris of the Fort Johnson Volunteer Fire Department out of Fort Johnson, New York, died of an apparent heart attack while responding on an emergency call. Matthew Smith of the Bartow County Fire and Emergency Service in Georgia was stricken by an acute medical emergency while on duty. Jeff Pfeiffer of the Deptford, New Jersey Fire Department suffered a heart attack while returning from a fire alarm. Eddie Heichel of the West Texas Fire Department was struck by a tractor trailer while operating on the scene of a vehicle fire. West Texas is that department in Texas that was hit by that explosion several years ago. Jermaine Pelt of the Chicago Fire Department was killed while fighting a residential fire. And Jan Korek, I believe that's his name, is also of the Chicago Fire Department. He was a lieutenant, suffered an apparent heart attack while operating in a high-rise fire. The deaths of Firefighter Pelt and Lieutenant Korek were just days apart. Please remember these members and remember their families, remember their friends, their fire department. Um, this year, the USFA has recorded a total of 21 line of duty deaths. Let me go back to the slide here. This is this month's Mayday Monday. Kind of want to talk about some air management stuff, and we're focusing this month on the memory of a firefighter Richard Sheltra, a young volunteer firefighter from Pineville, North Carolina. You can put the slides down. I have some friends here in the area who made a connection for me. I want to thanks goes out to members of the New Hope Fire Department for hooking me up with Chief here and talk about Richard. With this, I got a few members of the department. If you guys will do a couple seconds here, a minute, whatever, introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and really why you're here to talk about this. Chief, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So my name is Michael Gerin. I'm the fire chief here in Pineville. Uh, I've been a member of the Pineville Fire Department since I was 15. I'm 49 now, so total 35, 34 years. This is where I cut my teeth. This is where I entered the fire service just as a volunteer. I became the fire chief here in 2015. Both these guys are my buddies. I've known them for a very long time. They have a great deal to share about this. And the reason I'm here is the one thing I'm super proud of when it comes to the Pineville Fire Department. These two guys here that are with us today is that the one thing I think we've done well is we continue number one to honor Richard Sheltra. He's a great friend of ours, and until the day I take my final breath, we're going to continue to honor and remember him. And then the second thing we want to do by doing this is sharing our experiences, our personal experiences, in the hopes that whoever watches this, whoever reads it, takes one or two things away from us. And in the event that this ever happens again, I hope it doesn't. But if it does, then maybe they can take something from what we said and prepare themselves or be ready for that. So I'm super glad to be here. I'm glad that these guys chose to be here as well.
Well, I mean that's what we're here about, right? And I know you're active in some of the NFFF stuff, and it says never forget, right?
That's right.
And I think that as the time goes on and we get farther away from incidents, it does happen, and we can't, right? We need to keep thinking about these guys and remembering, what the sacrifices they made. So thanks, Chief, for being here. Tony Jennings, you want to say a little something?
Yeah. So my name's Tony Jennings. I was born and raised right here in the town of Pineville. I got into the Pineville Fire Department 39 years ago. My dad was there, both my brothers. So that's kind of how I got into the fire service. And 39 years later, here I am. I was the company officer the night of the Sheltra fire, and so that's kind of why I'm here. And I agree with Chief Gerin. Main reason I do this is so that we can get his story out there, so that hopefully it helps others, and so that we don't forget him as well.
Tony, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. While Bobby's on vacation and is going to give us some time here to talk about Richard and the fire. So, Bobby, just take a couple seconds here. Introduce yourself.
Okay, my name's Bobby Cash. Currently work Charlotte Fire Department. Been there a little over 20 years. Been in the fire service since late '96, so been in it for a little while. I've never worked for Pineville Fire Department, but I know these guys, like Chief Gerin said, I've known these guys for a long time. I've worked in their area as a company and a chief officer, and ran a lot of mutual aid fires with these guys. And I mean, it's an honor to be sitting here with you guys and chatting. And just like they said, hopefully, we don't forget any of this stuff. Richard's memory is going to live on forever. So we're here to do what we need to do to keep things like this from happening again.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about Richard. Again, from what I gather from reading about him, he got the nickname Bam Bam. Where did that come from? Anybody want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I'll take that. Yeah, he this whole slide in general, he was a like it says there, 20 years old, super fit, um, loved to work out. He came from a firefighting family. Tony and I, we've been here a long time. His father and mother were in a neighboring fire department. His father was the fire chief in a neighboring fire department. So Tony and I have known his family for greater than 30 years. But short, stocky dude, super fit, 20-year old, you know, 20-year-old man that was just looking to get in the fire service, getting ready to become a member of the Charlotte Fire Department. So he liked to pick weights up and put them down, basically.
Was he pretty active as a volunteer? I know, a short time there, but he was pretty active.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. Yeah, he was actually volunteering the night of the fire.
And
Super active.
and so was he was born there too? Like obviously, you said his dad was a neighbor, was a fire chief next door, right? And then why didn't he join his dad's fire department? Why did he? What brought him to Pineville?
Go ahead and hit that, Tony.
So that fire department no longer exists. That his father, the city annexed that part of the county. So when they closed that fire department, his father and mother both stepped away from the fire service. So he chose Pineville because he lives in the city of Charlotte, but we border the city of Charlotte on all four sides. We're within a half a mile from the city of Charlotte any way you look. So it was his closest department. Pineville has a real big response area, and he wanted to be at a busy station, so that's kind of why he chose Pineville.
And you say he was on a trying to get onto the Charlotte Fire Department also.
Yes, sir. So to Bobby's point, I'm a battalion chief in Charlotte as well, and so we probably run what, Bobby, 4 or 5 recruit class a year, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
And he was slated to be in one of the recruit classes. Don't get me lying, which one it was, 100, 101, whatever that was. But yeah, he was slated. He had already received his acceptance letter to get to start recruit class with the city of Charlotte.
Good. Are you guys involved with the Memorial Foundation?
Yeah, indirectly, all of us are. We continue to support that. His mom and dad started that in his memory, and and Tony's pretty active in that as well, and he can expound on that. But yeah, they that was a big deal to him, training, and he always complained about, the sometimes fire departments are understaffed. So that was a way for them to kind of start a foundation, give the less fortunate fire departments rural areas throughout North and South Carolina.
Yeah, I saw that they raised money for some equipment and stuff in different places.
They did. They just recently, not long ago, the last couple ones. So each year, coming up April 22nd, for anybody that's listening, if you're anywhere within striking distance of Pineville, North Carolina, we always do a 5K and a 10K run, and that's coming up April 22nd. So that's my shameless plug for that. But so yeah, every year they donate. I think the most recent thing they did, 10 sets of turnout gear for a rural fire department somewhere in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice, good stuff. Again, anything else we can keep doing to keep that memory alive? Let's talk about Pineville then. The Pineville Fire Department. I know again, like I gathered, it borders Charlotte. It sounds like you guys are right up against it. Town was incorporated in 1873, so been around for a long time. And I learned that it was like a mule trading center. Was that was there a lot of train traffic through there? Why was it? What was going on with the mule trading center there? Do you guys know?
Man, that's probably a question for Tony. He was probably around then.
Yeah, old country, old area there.
Right through the. Yeah, you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a train that goes right through the middle of town. And years ago, there used to even be a depot station here where people would, they'd go up to the depot station, purchase a ticket, and they take the ticket up to Charlotte and stuff like that. So don't know about the Mule Trading Center. I can't speak on that.
Our claim to fame is, and we gotta put this out there. Our claim to fame is we're the birthplace of the 11th president of the United States, James K. Polk.
Hey,
And
that's awesome.
yeah,
Carrying
and
that flag.
Yep, every kindergartner that goes through Pineville Elementary School, that James K. Polk is famous for "Hail to the Chief" because he was so short, nobody knew when he walked in the building. So they started "Hail to the Chief" because of James K. Polk. So there you go.
That's good. Now we have some dinner party trivia we can use on somebody, right?
That's right. Little history lesson for your viewers. There you go.
So the town proper is only about 7 square miles. Population of about 10,000 people.
It
Your
is. We run about 3,000 calls a year.
3,000 calls a year. Is that out of 2 firehouses? You have one firehouse?
No, sir. Out of one firehouse.
One firehouse. So this was this picture here is that everything's in the one place there.
Well, the building to the right as well. So that's actually a picture of our old ladder company. We have a new Pierce Ascendant 100-foot tower, mid-mount. But yeah, so the metal buildings where we house the tower, we're in the process of building a new firehouse. And then the brown building to the right is the firehouse as well. That houses the engine companies.
Do you have 3 engines?
We do, yes, sir.
A ladder truck and a rescue.
Yes, sir.
3,000 calls, about 50 members. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yep. Combination fire department. We have 3 full-time drivers, supplemented by part-time paid guys and girls. And then we're super fortunate in the fact that, rural metro Charlotte, we still have a pretty large group of volunteers. Most of them are part-time people or whatever, but yeah, we're super fortunate. We still have volunteers.
So it's a county system?
No. So yes and so no. The townships have their own fire departments. Most every fire department in Mecklenburg County, in the townships, the Pinevilles, the Huntersvilles, the Corneliuses, they're all incorporations contracted to provide fire service for the towns. And then the ETJs, the county portion, are all different fire departments that kind of contract with Mecklenburg County to provide fire service. So it is not a true county system, no.
So if a fire call comes in, it just dispatch the Pineville Fire Department.
And the mutual aid or automatic aid responses, yes.
What do you get if like the fire that at the strip mall there? What does that get? 3 engines, a ladder truck.
So yeah, so yes, the way and we can talk about it. But yes, the way it worked there was 2 fire departments. It came in as smoke in the building. I think it came in as a structure fire, but smoke in the building. And we can get into the incident itself, how we got the call. But the fire alarm, it did not come out as a fire alarm. Pineville Police Department were actually doing zone checks, and one of the sergeants saw smoke in the building.
I got you. So you guys run all kinds of calls. You run EMS response too.
Oh man, so that's why I was running a bit late. I had yeah. So and we're changing this a bit in Mecklenburg County, but every time an ambulance goes out, a fire truck goes out with them, basically.
And that's like a private ambulance service, or is it a volunteer thing?
So it's quasi-governmental. Yeah, very much. It's an incorporation as well. They receive funding from Mecklenburg County for fees, transport fees, stuff like that, and some other funding. But yes.
Gotcha. I gotcha. So but it's Pineville just runs kind of in their town.
Correct, and we provide automatic aid response to other areas as well. We actually provide some automatic aid response into South Carolina, because if you look at Charlotte, there's Pineville, and South Carolina borders us to the south. So we actually run some automatic aid response into South Carolina as well.
Where do you run with the New Hope guys?
We do not, but Mike McKay and those guys, some of my favorite people on the planet. No, they're in a completely different county.
They're like up north, farther up north.
No, they're out there. That's a question for Bobby Cash. That's Gaston County's his hometown.
Yeah, we're all Gaston County's
Southeast.
to the west of Mecklenburg County.
I got you. So
they're in the very southeast part of Gaston County.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. So I know how far is Greensboro?
Oh God.
About 2 hours.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah.
I got you. And Gastonia? That's up here, right? Up to the northeast, northwest?
Yeah, that's where Bobby's from.
Yeah, okay. I live in Gaston County. Yep. Gastonia's the county seat. That's where it's dead in the middle of the county.
All right, good. All right, so we got the Pineville figured out there. Let's get to the incident then. So all you guys were there on duty somewhere or another, right? Chief, you were at the firehouse that night?
No, I was not. I had actually just finished eating supper with my wife, and I'd sat at the house. I just sat down at the house, and we were relieving our babysitter.
So I heard storms were coming through or something?
They were. Yep, 100%. And I'd actually left my car at the firehouse. And so I'd sat down at the house. I was in my truck. I live a block from the firehouse. So yeah, and that's kind of like the thing here in Mecklenburg County for the south side of Charlotte. When storms come through, that's Station 24's claim to fame, who was there with us, is that when they call it Lightning Alley, when storms come through Mecklenburg County, South Charlotte is usually good for at least one fire.
Really? So that's a known thing. You call it Lightning Alley?
And it genuinely is. They typically go to some fires when storms come through. It always comes through South Charlotte for some reason.
So was there a lot of guys hanging out that night?
There were, yeah. Richard actually went to the firehouse, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Tony, but Richard actually went to the firehouse because I think he told his mom that there were storms coming in, and he knew that we were going to be busy, so that's why he was at the firehouse.
Gotcha. So Tony, you were on hanging out that night too, or on duty? What do you guys have, like crews that staff the firehouse, or is it kind of whoever shows up?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't on staff that night. I do work. I did work part time, but I wasn't on shift. I had volunteered on a call before that, and I about probably about a half a mile from the fire station, and I was about halfway home when the call came in uh, for Richard's fire, and I turned around and went back to the firehouse.
What time was it?
2,100 hours.
At 9 o'clock is when and you say the sheriffs rolled up there and saw smoke?
Pineville Police Department.
The police department, was it also because of the storm they were checking it out, or they always run through there and kind of monitor?
I don't know. I can't remember that. I don't genuinely remember what happened. I don't. Maybe they were doing zone checks. Don't quote me on that, Tony. But I think they were doing zone checks. If you want to know the truth.
I see. So that's a typical thing where they patrol and do a check of that area to see what's going on.
Yep. Yeah,
But
for
at any
sure.
rate, they recognized there was smoke in the building.
They did.
So that generated a response of Pineville and the
Carolina
neighbor
Fire Department.
Carolina.
Yep.
So Tony, you got on the rig, and how many guys were on the fire truck with you that night? Do you remember?
Five of us.
5, and that's pretty typical, especially with somebody's hanging out for the storm.
It is.
Yeah, if you got guys hanging around, the firehouse, and especially if something like a structure fire comes in or smoke in a building, and we don't go to a whole lot of these strip mall deals, so um, they're we kind of figured there may be something to it. So yeah, normally you got 3 to 4, but this night, since there were people hanging out, we had 5 of us.
So how many fire trucks went initially? Do you remember?
We ended up with 2 and 1. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. 2 engine companies, our ladder company, and the squad.
All from Pineville?
Yes, sir. And
And
an engine company from Carolina as well.
Carolina, that was initial response.
Yes, sir.
When they arrived on the scene, was there anything unusual or out of the ordinary? Was there a lot? I see you have a picture of smoke coming out of it. Was that what you found when you got there?
No, not even remotely close. When I actually first got there, and if you look down there at the corner down there of the picture there, that's a driveway entering into the parking lot. So I entered there and started on the kind of that Alpha Bravo side of the building. I was in my car. I went to the firehouse to grab my car and responded in it. I ran the fire lane all the way past where the fire building was at, where it shows the fire building, hooked a right into the parking lot, did like a 180 and faced the building. And when I first got there, my initial radio report, I gave a report of the building and with nothing showing. Because when I stopped in front of the fire building, I didn't see any smoke in there. So
So,
I called out with nothing showing.
so this picture in the top right is pretty much what your positioning and what you saw.
That's yes, sir. That's about where I landed. Yes.
Did the police say anything to you? Or?
So yeah, I very distinctly remember because it was raining, and I very distinctly remembering rolling the window down about that far, and Sergeant Bill Wright was the one, and I thought to myself, man, it's raining. I don't want to get wet. And Bill came up to me and he goes, "Hey man, there's smoke in the building." I was like, "There's no smoke in the building." I'm sitting here looking at it. This police officer doesn't know what he's talking about. And then when they forced the front door, then and Tony can talk about that. When they forced the front door, I quickly realized that it was much worse than I thought.
Okay, so what's the big white building here?
That is a AutoZone.
AutoZone, and then right next to it is the Edwin Watts.
Correct. Yep.
So what time
I
did they
think
close?
uh,
Like 8 o'clock probably?
I think in between the AutoZone and Edwin Watts was at the time was a
Salvation
not
Army,
a
wasn't it?
Goodwill, but Salvation Army. Yes, there's a
Yeah.
building. There's a unit in between them.
Yep. Yep.
Gotcha. All right. So Edwin Watts was closed up though for the night when you guys got there.
It was.
And so initially nothing showing. Tony, you guys show up. What did you guys do when you first got there?
So when we got off the truck, myself and Johnny Hill, which was on the back with me, we went to the front door, and we both put our hands up to the window and looked inside, and we both just looked at each other at the same time, and we were like, "Holy shit, this thing's full of smoke!" And the building was holding the smoke really good because when we first I think if it would have been regular weather that night, like clear weather, I think we would have had a different outcome for the chief and ourselves when we pulled up, because the rain and the fog and everything kind of probably hid some of the smoke that was seeping out of the building. So when we looked in the window, we could see the building was completely full of smoke.
I got you. So you full of smoke. Um, Crews coming. Did you guys force entry, or was a ladder truck get there?
Yeah. So there's two pieces to that. So ladder 24 from the city of Charlotte. So if you look at the front of that building, Highway 51 runs in front of that building, right? So ladder 24 was clearing a call up at the neighborhood in the city of Charlotte, right across the street, right across the Alpha side, and they were kind of in my rear. And they called me and they said they called me on the radio, said, "Hey, ladder 24 is clearing a call across the street. Do you want to add them to it?" So I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, add them to it if they're clearing right across the street." So my direction to ladder 24, and Tony can talk about this, was when they opened the door, or when they opened those glass doors, they encountered kind of a bar, a
Yeah.
gate. So I told my direction to ladder 24 was to get their cutoff saw to the front door so that they could make that gate.
All right. So the glass doors open. You got a gate inside. Conditions was there a lot of heat or just smoke coming out?
No, at that time there wasn't a whole lot of heat, and the smoke was probably banked down to about, I'd say, probably close to 4 feet off the floor at the time we made entry.
So
And the
once the
only
door
reason I know
opened,
that,
it was a little bit of lift, about 4 foot. You said.
yeah, the only reason I remember that is because I could remember when Johnny went in front of me, I could read his nameplate on the back of his coat as he was walking in front of me.
Did you guys go in with a hand line at that point?
No, the two of us walked in. Johnny had the tick, and he made his way kind of into the building just to kind of see, we couldn't see any fire at all, and we didn't have any heat. We didn't hear any cracking or popping or anything like that. So we were kind of unaware of, where the fire may be. So Johnny took the tick and, went a few feet into the building and found the fire and turned around and came back out and said, when he came past me, he goes, "Hey, I found the fire. I know where it's at." And at that point, that's when we started advancing the hand lines.
So where were you getting heat from? The back of it, the back of storeroom area or something?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would be if I had to explain it the best, where we were at in the building putting fire out would be in the CD corner. Is kind of where we were at.
Kind of to the right of that arrow, Tony.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where the fire was coming out of there, or was it not? It wasn't obvious yet. You just had heat signatures.
No, the heat. I mean, the fire was obvious. Our biggest problem, or not our biggest problem, but one of the biggest obstacles we had is the golf tournament. They have a really large golf tournament every year in Charlotte for the PGA. That was in town that was coming in town that week, and so all the golf stores around had beefed up their inventory for this golf thing. So there was tons and tons and tons of inventory in the building. So it was kind of hard to navigate getting through there. Um, but once he found it with the tick, they kept the tick and went in with the hand line and went back there to the fire. And the fire was all up in the ceiling.
Oh, really? It was in the ceiling?
Yeah.
So that was going to be tough to get to then too.
Yeah, I mean I think 90% of the building, and Chief can correct me if I'm wrong. I think 90% of it's acoustical ceiling, so a lot of it had already started falling. Um, and but by the time, and you stop me when I get too far ahead, but by the time we had walked back outside, got the hand line, and advanced the hand line in, we went to zero visibility, and the smoke was banked all the way to the floor. So it went from being able to see a person's coattail with their name on it, and within probably 2 to 3 minutes, it was all the way to the floor, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
So what point? How far were you in there before you started seeing any flames?
Uh, Chief, what would you say? 50 feet? I mean, maybe 75 feet. Maybe not even that.
Yeah, it was that long bowling alley style building there, Tony, as you can see. So it was of course the for those guys, unfortunately, it was back there in the Charlie Delta side. So it's a pretty long stretch. Bobby, I don't even remember. Do you know what the stretch was back to that Charlie side?
I don't. Assistant on the second line, everything, most of it was already in play by the time we got there.
Yeah. So, and what they also encountered was right when you went in that door, there was kind of this U-shaped cashier thing. So they had to go one way or the other, right? So they hooked a left, and like Tony said, and when we went back in there, all these golf bags are just falling down and raining down. So, and it
Yeah.
was that
So
it was that cold, wet smoke that's just laying low. You know what I'm saying?
cold, wet smoke, but it was top to bottom zero viz now, right?
Yeah, and I would
Yeah,
say.
we had at one point in time, I went to turn the volume down on my radio so I could focus on what I was doing because there was a lot of radio traffic. And I remember when I reached down, I turned the channel knob instead of the volume knob because I felt the clicks in my fingers, and I kind of thought, oh no, I'll never figure out what channel we're on. And I took the radio out of my pocket and held it up to my face piece, and I couldn't see the green light on the radio. So I mean, I couldn't see my hands, I couldn't see my fingers, I couldn't see anything.
So this building, from what I read, was 140 feet deep.
That makes good sense. Yeah, I would.
And you
Yeah,
think you had
I would say we were 70. I would say we were between 60 to 75 feet in the building.
when you saw fire, or that's as far as
Yeah,
you?
no, that's when we got to where the fire was, and they hunkered down and started putting the fire out.
So inch and three quarter hand line,
That to start, yes, that's correct.
and was making good progress.
Yeah, we put the fire out with the first hand line.
At this time, it was you guys and the Charlotte ladder truck, or was you think everybody was there about this time?
Oh man, that's I don't know. I'll tell you when that's how Bobby and them got there. When that smoke started piling out, I asked for a box alarm from the city of Charlotte. Get you 4 1-1, 4 engines, a battalion, uh, a ladder, and a rescue. I'm sorry, you get the rescue as well. And so they were already on the road. Carolina laid away. They reversed out to kind of there's that road coming down the Delta side of the strip mall, or the Delta side of the strip mall. If you hook a right out of that parking lot, the hydrant was right there. So if you notice the picture of engine 3 there, Carolina had laid away to the hydrant. So that 5-inch going into the officer side, that's where Carolina laid away.
Okay, so water supply wasn't an issue.
Not at all, not even close. No, it was right on Highway 51. I'll bet, man, I don't, very, very high volume hydrant.
How long do you think you were in, and you guys were operating before anybody got low on air?
So that's a very good question. I wish I don't have that. I'll tell you this, about the time Bobby and them get in there and issue the Mayday and all that. That's when the first arriving companies are starting to come out, and we can get into Richard and how Johnny and those guys ended up and Bobby, but we're probably I sent a Charlotte company to the Charlie side to open up the back doors on that because I knew they were deep in the building. I wanted to give them a second way out of the building because they were so deep. If they needed to exit the Charlie side, I wanted them to get out the Charlie side. And it was either 16 or 20. Bobby, you're going to have to clear this up. 16 or 20 took a 2.5 in. So that was the second line off the truck.
So, Bobby, you were on the ladder truck, or you were chief on the box?
No, I was a company officer on Engine 20 that night. We the city was extremely busy. Like I said, the thunderstorm rolled through. There were tons of car crashes. There were tons of power line calls. We were actually sitting on a power line call, and at Station 20, we cross-manned a small utility truck, brush truck type deal. And so while the engine company's sitting on a power line call, babysitting it, our battalion came and got one of our firefighters, took them back to the fire station, and then he got the brush truck and was babysitting the power line call so we could put the engine company back in service. As we're coming up close to the firehouse, going back to quarters, we got popped for the second alarm, or for the box to go down to Pineville to help. While we were going, one of our firefighters, Ray Egner, was in the brush truck. He was assigned to it that day. He was sitting on the power line call. We called him on the ops channel he was on and told him, hey, when it stops arcing or whatever it's doing, get to Pineville as soon as you can. And I'm sure mysteriously they stopped arcing at that time because he got down there pretty quick. So
Christmas miracle.
Yeah. So we pull up. Chief Gerin, as soon as I check on scene, Chief Gerin gives us the order to assist with the second line. We get to the front door. There's two lines going in. Both of them are static. None of them's moving at this point. So they're both red. So we don't know which one's which. We ask the question, which one's the backup line? We take our pick. Nobody really knows because they're, like I said, they're both the same size. They're both the same color. So they both go in. They both go to the left. Luckily, we just chose the right one. Our drivers parking the rig, myself and firefighter Jeff Field, go in on the second line, what we figured out to be the second line. And we get about halfway up the line, going back into the building, and meet a Pineville firefighter. And they say that, said, hey, Charlotte Engine 20, what do you need? Said, hey, my nozzleman's up there by themselves. I said, all right, so we got it. So they came out to swap bottles. We kept going, got to the nozzleman, said, hey, Charlotte Engine 20, what do you need? He said, so I need more hose. I can't get to the back of the building. So, all right, we're an engine company, so that's what we do. So Jeff and myself, we go back to the door. We both I grab a bundle of hose, start going back in the building. Jeff grabs some under his arm, like through his arm, and then he grabs a handful. And as he's like almost like 3-point crawling to pull all that hose with him. Just a tremendous effort on Jeff's part to get that much hose in the building with that little bit of pull. As we're going, I don't remember what I went around. Conditions in there are just like they said, no visibility. It's not hot by any means. It's like that cold smoke in a sprinkled building when you have a fire. But you can definitely tell there's a fire in there. It's just nasty, brown, black smoke. As we're going, I shot everything with the tick, didn't see any heat. As we're going, we came in there the first time and met the person that was traveling down the line to go out and swap bottles. There was like a golf bag or two. I remember clear as day that there was like a huge, almost like Caddyshack novelty bag sitting there that was gigantic. It had fallen over and several golf clubs skidded out of it. I remember that exactly where it was. That's kind of our turnaround point when we went to where we met that one firefighter. Before we got to went up and met the nozzle person.
How far do
Uh,
you think that was? How far deep in that?
I'd say once you get in the front door, go around the cashier. It was like a cashier's island. As soon as you go in, everything went to the left and back to a center aisle. I'd say probably 50, 60 feet at the most. We got to that point. We started going in, and I don't know what I can't remember what I asked Jeff. I asked him a question, like yelled it pretty loud, and didn't hear anything. I yelled a little bit louder, and I thought I heard Jeff behind me mumbling a little bit. So I dropped what I'm doing. I dropped a little bit of hose. I still see where I'm at on the hose line. I go back probably 12, 15 feet at the most, and Jeff's just sitting there in the floor. He's like taking a knee, and he's in the floor. And I'm like, Jeff, what are you doing? And he goes, this guy's down. We got to get him out of here. So I don't know how far you want to go. If you want to kind of pause right there, or our
Yeah,
actions
yeah.
after
Let's go.
that.
So all right. So you guys got there. Obviously, it's a quick response for the Charlotte box to get there.
Right.
Everybody's pretty close. Um, I know looking at the timeline in the NIOSH report, it was like 20 minutes, right? I think 20 minutes from the time you guys got there, Tony, until a Mayday was called, maybe 25 minutes. That seems, like you guys were working, right? That should be about the time when people are getting low on air and need to come out. You said you made good progress on the fire initial knockdown. Would you say that you got initial knockdown?
Yeah, so Richard and Johnny were on the line, and of course I was as well. I was several feet behind them because I took about 10 steps in and realized I didn't have a tool, and went back and got somebody to grab me a Halligan, and so I was catching back up. And when I got to the guys, um, I asked Johnny. I said, "What do we got?" And he said, "Man, I think we got the fire out." He goes, "I don't. And I'm like, all right, well, let's just sit still for a minute. So we sat there for a minute. And, I guess if you've been doing it long enough, you can kind of, like Bobby said, you can kind of tell with the heat whether there's fire or not. And we didn't have a whole lot of heat. I didn't hear any of the crackling and popping, or, we didn't see anything glowing or anything like that. It was real, real quiet. All we could hear was water dripping from the ceiling. And so we sat there for, I don't know, a minute or two. And then I told those guys, I said, well, just open it up and wet the shit out of it. Wet everything in the vicinity, and just keep putting water on it until we can get some of this smoke lifted out of here and we can see what's going on.
And
So I felt
oh, go ahead, Tony. Keep on.
I felt very comfortable at the time, and we'd have to go back to radio transmissions, but I think I felt pretty good at the time that we had controlled the fire at that point.
Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah. So and he talked about this. It was that drop ceiling. That foam drop ceiling, wire drop ceiling. Simultaneously, a point. After ladder 24 dropped their cutoff saw at the front door, I put them on the roof. So I sent you some pictures of that built up roof. That's what it was. It was a built up roof, tar, gravel, foam, metal decking. So they were working the roof simultaneously. So they were trying to get it opened up top.
So again, you got everything surrounded. The fire wasn't extending, right? Wasn't extending to the exposures. So the firefight was well underway, and it seemed like you had a handle on that part. Now, 25 minutes into it, what was Richard's actions?
Yeah. So Richard was on the very first line, right? He came off the fire truck, or he came off the engine company, stretched with Tony and them, and Richard was running low on air, so he was going out to get another bottle. Cliff Notes circled back around and ended up back on the nozzle. So that's when Johnny Hill said, "Hey man, let's go ahead and get out of here." So Johnny and Richard exited the building together.
I got you. So, Bobby, that's who you guys met as you were coming in.
So as soon as we got there, somebody was helping Johnny out of the building. We didn't know the extent of his circumstance and what was going on with him at the time. It was like somebody like, "Hey, here's the door," and bam, he was out. You know, nothing
I,
was. Go ahead,
that
Tony.
that was me. That was me. They encountered me in the very beginning. It's kind of weird how the story goes because I stayed with the nozzle and Johnny and Richard left, but Johnny and Richard uh, ended up getting lost. And so when I finally started coming down on air, um, I I encountered them, and that's when I told them that Bill Griffin was at the nozzle by himself, and he needed somebody up there, and that I couldn't figure out where I was at, and I had to get out. And the same notion they had kind of pointed where the door was.
Yeah. So long story short, what we found out is they got about halfway out. I'm sorry, Tony. I'm sitting here looking at Tony's name. Johnny and Richard made about halfway out of the building, and Richard ran out of air and was trying to get out of the building. So he ended up off of the nozzle, right? Because he had run out of air. That's what we believe happened. So Johnny Hill, who was running low on air as well, um, took off after him to try and get him. So another company found Johnny, got him to the front door, and then Bobby's company, Engine 20, encountered Richard on the way back in.
Okay, so now we're back to Bobby, you and your guys were found somebody inside, and is that who was that who you when you stopped your story? Is that where we are now?
Yeah, correct. So I say something to Jeff. He doesn't respond. I yell even louder. I can barely hear him. Turn around, 12 feet at the most, somewhere around in there. And Jeff's taking a knee. Like, Jeff, what are you doing? And he's like, "Hey, man, this guy's down. We got to get him out of here." He's kind of between the primary and the backup line, out in the middle of the aisle. Didn't know who it was at the time. All I seen was a guy down. We immediately called the Mayday. As we're doing this, kind of out in the parking lot, Egner, our firefighter who was with the brush truck, got there mysteriously. Like you said, the power lines quit arcing. So he made it, had gotten dressed. Our driver, Mark Carter, had also got dressed, and both of them were already in the building coming to assist Jeff and I on that backup line. So we didn't know that at the time. They met up on us, called the Mayday in, initially said it estimated 75 feet inside the building. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it ended up being like 50, 55 feet, somewhere
in there, right in there, yeah.
So heat of the moment, we overshot it a little bit. Engine 16 was in there operating as well. They had came up and were assisting us. So we found Richard and Jeff. As Jeff was going in there, that's how he kind of dumbed up on him. We weren't actively looking for Richard. Jeff, in that kind of stance he was going and putting his hand down, he actually put his hand on Richard and found him. Like I said, zero visibility. That's a kind of a bad choice of words, I guess, but we did truly dumb up on him. We weren't looking for him. He was face down towards the exit. Pass device was not active at the time he was down. So best we can tell, he had just finally laid down, just went down, and we kind of went to work from there.
So that's a good point, Tony. We know from we're fortunate in the fact that Scott Air Packs are made in Monroe in Union County, North Carolina. Gaston's to the west of us. Union County's to the east. So we're able to take our air packs to Scott. We also took them to West Virginia to NIOSH. We know for a fact that his air pack did not go into pre-alert, and to Bobby's point, his pass device did not activate. So he was not down long when they came across him because he didn't even pre-alert.
Vibra alert was that sounding?
Nobody
No.
remembers that. Nobody remembers that. Do you?
No, not 100%, but I don't remember it.
Only
So Was a Rich team
I only
activated, or
remember the vibe.
did Bobby? Did you guys? You guys?
You do remember the Viber alert, Tony?
Yeah,
Bobby,
I do
your
remember the
crew.
Viber alert when he circled back.
Right. Okay.
Bobby, your crew. You and your crew was the ones who brought Richard out.
Yeah, so Engine 16 was with us. Also, our driver Mike and other firefighter Ray, they had actually joined us up, and we didn't know it. So we had 7 hands on Richard bringing him out. Called the Mayday in. Everybody grabbed a piece of gear, air pack, whatever they could grab, and we were out the door with him. We weren't Rick. Like I said, we were assisting with the second line. Packaging, getting a rip bag in there, none of that was even a thought. Our process and my thoughts were on ceramic tile all the way out the door. I knew where we just came, and everything was wet from the humidity in there, from the hose lines being operated. So, packaging, converting his waist strap to a harness, all that good stuff, that wasn't even a thought. Even at 75 feet, like I said, we overshot it a little bit, but even at 75, we didn't waste time with that. We knew he was down, didn't know why. He didn't respond, so we shucked him out of the building as fast as we could and started taking gear off as soon as we broke the threshold.
How fast was as fast as you could? You think?
Chief Gerin, do you remember the time after we called
So
the
no,
Mayday?
I was going to make that point. I remember the Mayday. Bobby issued the Mayday. I was going to call for an additional alarm because of the Mayday. That's pretty standard. Mayday gets an additional alarm no matter what. But I had just called for an additional alarm that they were sounding as he pulled the Mayday. So I was like, I'm not going to call an additional alarm on top of that. So I remember him calling the Mayday, and next thing I know, he's standing in front of me. So I can't imagine it was 2 or 3 minutes. I really can't.
Well, I can tell you the NIOSH report has the timeline. Mayday called by Engine 20 captain at 21:35. Down firefighter removed at 21:43. So
43.
yeah,
Yeah.
43. So 8 minutes, right? 8 minutes from Mayday to out the front door. And that, again, those are timelines. So you might see him and say, oh, and now he's out. And I
Yeah,
don't know.
that may be dependent upon me issuing the radio traffic. I'd had a conversation with a medic supervisor in between there. One of our other guys was having a few problems. So yeah, and it may be, but no, that would really surprise me if it took him that long. I don't think that. But yeah, you're right.
So also the timeline says it was like 2 minutes before until he was transported, right? Throw him in the back of the ambulance and head him off to the hospital, which I'm sure the hospital's not that far away from where you guys were.
So yeah, so oddly enough, I just had just the other day I had a conversation with the paramedic that transported Richard. Phenomenal guy, really good guy. There's a hospital in Pineville. It is not a level 1. I think it's a level 3. Got him in the back of the ambulance, and he wanted to take him to Uptown Charlotte because Uptown is a level 1, and if there were any burn injuries or anything like that, his thinking was, internal burn. If he had his mask off or whatever, he wanted to get him to the level 1. So, absolute right call. I would never in a million years second guess that. So he actually bypassed the local Atrium Health and went uptown because it's a level 1.
All right, so he got the best care he could get.
100%.
Let's get back to the fire. Was there more to the fire, or was the fire pretty much out at that time?
No, and I'll say this, and I mean this with all my heart. I'm not. They made extreme quick work of the fire. They, I mean they, the fire was not all that significant. It was not that. I wasn't in there. I'll defer to Tony. Tony's been to a lot of fires with me. I've been to bigger house fires. I think it was really very much a room and contents, right? Right, Tony?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there wasn't a ton of fire. I think and I don't know that it's ever been proven or what, but I think what created all that smoke, that thick, sticky, can't see smoke, was they had a golf shop, a repair shop in the back. And I think they had not hundreds but thousands of golf grips, and all those golf grips were melting, and that's just like throwing a tire off your car in a fire, and you know what that does. And so I think that's what was creating that smoke, from what I understand.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the picture that this was included in the NIOSH, and you sent one too, Chief. That there's not a lot of fire damage below, right in the showroom area. You say it was all kind of above, and then if there was something in the back storage room, but ultimately, it's looks like a pretty well contained um, commercial building fire, right? Strip mall fire.
Yep,
Um,
and that's point of reference, Tony. That's the Bravo wall, and you're looking towards the Alpha side. The sun is coming in the Alpha side windows there.
yeah, so like you said, the tire on a fire produces a lot of nasty smoke, and definitely hazardous, and it's going to be tough for us to find our way. And then to add that the crazy layout of these buildings with the extra stock is definitely not working in our favor.
Nope, and built up roof. They're working that roof. We cut a lot of residential. You know, shingle, plywood roofs. So I mean, very few people cut built up roofs, but they were working it. And when they did, it's raining. That cold smoke, it won't lift. So yep.
Right, right. Yeah, I'll definitely not working in your favor. So let's get to some lessons learned here. What kind of two or three things that you think that we need to learn from this incident, from Richard's sacrifice, from the things you guys put into this? Um, Bobby, you want to go first?
One thing I could say, and I failed to mention it a little earlier, I believe, is we met the nozzle person. They said, "Hey, my nozzleman's alone." After we talked to him, we came back, got more hose. The second time we made it up the line, all those golf bags and all that inventory that we've talked about was everywhere. So it was burying both hose lines. Both of them were pretty close in that center aisle on that ceramic floor, and that hit me pretty hard. I remember that like it was yesterday. That those bags were everywhere, and you really had to pay attention to what you were doing, or you would either get off the hose line or get on the wrong one. So just staying oriented is a big thing. Staying oriented to that hose line. If you don't have a search rope running in there or something else, if you're on that hose line, stay oriented pretty much at all costs if you can. We kind of joke about it around work. We tell recruits and the newer folks at work that you know, even when you're nasty after a fire, as you're loading hose on the rig, put your fire gloves on, and every time a coupling passes through your hands, read that coupling. That way if God forbid something bad happens, there's no mistaking the smooth bump to the pump. You know exactly what you're doing. You don't have to sit there and actually fiddle with the hose. And we do drills along those lines and everything else with our newer folks. But uh, that's one thing I can plug for this is stay oriented to that hose line.
So let me ask you about that. Right, you came on an engine.
Mm-hmm.
You came on an engine, so you obviously, if it's a building fire, you're probably going to stretch a hose line. So you have a conduit to get you back outside.
Right.
If you had come on a ladder truck, what would you use?
I'd have a search rope stretched. And every company in the city, and I'm assuming every company in Pineville has a search rope on it somewhere.
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we forget, right? We forget about those. And I know places where, they think the search rope is a RIT tool and it's only for like RIT deployments, and we forget about the tip of the initial search operation, right? The initial search operation definitely, if we're going into some kind of crazy building like that, while it wasn't huge, right? It wasn't a large area necessarily. It's definitely going to be a confusing layout. So if you need to get out quick, you really need something to take with you. Well, thank you, Tony. Some couple things to remember from this.
Yeah, and I'll have to jump on with Bobby, not to kind of ride his coattail, but I can think back to probably the very first fire class I ever took almost 40 years ago, and it taught you smooth bump to the pump, and the hose line you brought in leads you back to where you came from. So um, that so I would say orientation, um, no, being oriented with where you're at, um, making sure that you know where that hose line is all the time. I did a poor job of coming off the hose line and lost the hose line, and that's my life safety. So, um, and then I think probably the biggest thing that I would ever want to take from this to get to anybody out there other than that would be never be scared to call the Mayday. I grew up in the fire service that, is a lot different than the fire service now. We trained in fires that were a lot different than training fires now. We got to really experience what heat and getting burnt was like. And I don't want to come out. I don't want to be the first guy to come out. And so I know what that feeling probably is for some people to be in a situation and not want to call the Mayday because if it's not a true Mayday or whatever the backlash he's going to get or whatever back at the firehouse. But if you're in a situation, you got to call that Mayday. It's so easy to overturn it than to have what we had happen. And I would just say calling that Mayday if you're in need to make sure you use it.
Yeah, something you mentioned about the staying on the hose line, right? And I think obviously we go to more fires in the houses than we do in commercial buildings. And while you should stay on a hose line in a house, your chances of finding a window or something are a lot easier, a lot better in a house, right? That's why it's so important to get in commercial building that you have something and you got that hose line, then don't lose it. The smooth bump to the pump thing, whatever you got to do, whatever your way to remember that is, it's important. Thank you, Tony. Chief Gerin.
Yeah, the whole lugs for life thing, all that. Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna Bobby and I, man, we teach a lot of company officer stuff in Charlotte together. We did a thing on Graham Street and all the. So I'm gonna reiterate and tag on to Tony, and I'll give you something else, my own personal one. But yeah, so we talk about this all the time. Um, we are very alpha driven organization. We're fire service, oh man, calling a Mayday. I've been in 1,000 square foot houses. I think we all have turned into a closet, not knowing what planet I'm on. Right. So at the end of the day, calling that Mayday, most of the time you're going to go back to the firehouse, sit at the kitchen table, cup of coffee. They're going to rag you. Right. They're going to joke about it. But when the dust settles, most every one of them are going to say, okay, man, tell me what happened because so it doesn't happen to me. So call a Mayday, live to fight another day, right? We talk about that often, Bobby and I. The one thing we will not do personally uh, in my battalion in Charlotte, in the Pineville Fire Department, anybody that's associated with me in the fire service, uh, we will never, ever again send a person out on his own. If there are three of us as a 3-man crew, because my driver's out front, if I'm running low on air, right? Tony Carroll has 4,500 psi. Bobby has 3,000, right? Everybody's coming out because I can't leave Tony Carroll in there by himself. Somebody's got to come out with me. So we will never ever again send somebody else out on their own. That's the way it is. If one person comes out, we're all coming out. Unless you got a 4-man crew, 2 people got to stay together.
Yeah, I think that is a tough lesson to learn, but it's important and something we have to carry on with us. So you guys all hopefully if you're following the Mayday Monday, you know that there's a link to the NIOSH report in the Mayday Monday, and the NIOSH report's good stuff. But what's even better is getting this straight from these guys who were involved. And I can't say enough about you all coming on. Bobby taking time out of your vacation, Tony just getting done eating, uh, Chief Gerin, coming in and making time for us. It means a lot to me at Mayday Monday. It means a lot. It's going to mean a lot to the fire service as well. Thank you all for coming on. I want to transition now to kind of talk about the skill drill for this month. Um, Mark, if you put, there you go. Yep. If you guys, couple of things you've noticed this year since we've started Mayday Monday in January. Um, February was a close call. We looked at a fire in Lubbock, Texas, in a cotton warehouse. The skill drill for that was just what we're talking about, was follow the hose, right? Follow the hose. And we also talked about following a search rope, because a lot of us out there have search ropes with knots and rings and that kind of stuff. So make sure you know how to follow that thing out to find your way out, right? Practice that. Don't wait for a fire to practice these things. You have to practice these things ahead of time. Tony, you listen to Tony and you listen to Bobby talk about when you're packing the hose back from a fire and you laid it out and you're putting it back on the fire truck, get your firefighting gloves on there and feel that thing. Or even better yet, lay it out in the firehouse and put some mask on, put a wax paper over your face and practice that stuff. Again, if it's nothing, if you don't do it because of the close call in Lubbock, do it because of Richard Sheltra. You may never know this kid, but look what happened, and learn from this. Honor him, honor his memory by going and practicing the the smooth, the pump, all that kind of stuff. Practice that. In March last month, we looked at a fire also involving a commercial building, and it was Brett Tarver out of Phoenix. That month's skill drill was 2.5 inch operations, right? 2.5 inch handline operations. So some things that are important, and you need to make sure you can do these things in every fire, but definitely as we get into these commercial building fires, is following the hose, using a 2.5 inch handline. And this month, and another important survival skill for commercial building fires is knowing how much air you have in your tank. Air management is an important skill. Again, it's important for single family dwellings, but it's compounded even more when we get into buildings that are bigger or take you longer to get in than you have air on your back. So know exactly how much air you can get out of these things. This month, get on a treadmill. Get on a treadmill, walk on a treadmill. Go outside and walk around a track, right? Walk around a track. Or you know what? Here's an easy one. Just put your air pack on and sit down and watch TV. You'll be surprised at how much air you can actually get out of that thing. Remember, this stuff is rated for your breathing at 40 liters per minute. Well, what does that really mean? How much is 40 liters a minute? If you're sitting down watching TV, you might only be breathing at 20 liters a minute. That means that bottle is going to last longer. And if you're doing something else, it's going to last less, right? If you get up to breathing at 100 liters per minute, you're not going to get much air out of that thing at all. But know exactly what that means. Here you can see again, this was a drill I did several years ago. The guys love to be able to sit down and watch TV. And really, if we could have been out of service long enough, we would have been out of service for 2 hours, because that's how long we can get out of that bomb. And we go outside and play basketball. This is a great one because it mimics a fire a lot, because there was a lot of time where you were breathing heavy, then there'd be some time where you weren't breathing heavy at all, and you could kind of catch your breath. So get out there and practice and just do something. Find out how long it can last and how much air you can get out of it, and time yourself. And then, who knows? Maybe you go out and do some physical fitness training, and you come back a year from now and you can get more air out of that cylinder. The other things you can do is find out some breathing exercises maybe, and practice that to see how you can vary. You can change how much air you get out of that thing. You can make it last longer or make it last shorter, depending on what kind of exertion and how hard you're breathing. So practice that this month, and get another survival skill. All right, with that, you can put the slides away for me, Mark. This month, couple of things. We have a new producer. Peter's not with us this month for fire engineering. We have new Mark is kind of our producer for this month. So thank you for coming out. Thank again fire engineering for what they're doing for producing this stuff. If you're going to be at FDIC this month, later on this month, I'll be there. April 28th, I think, is when my class is. It's the morning after my birthday. So hopefully it won't be a rough morning, but you'll see it. And come out 8:30 in the morning, find me. We'll do a Mayday Monday. We'll talk about some of these things, dig a little bit deeper into these. Uh, Mike, Bobby, and Tony, thank you guys for coming on, keeping that memory alive. Hopefully, it'll be a good 5K, 10K run later on this month for Richard's memory, and that foundation will be doing their good work. Thank you again. That's the Mayday Monday for April 2023.